Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. This is Mike Murata. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. We have a whole bunch of stuff to go through as we start on our first webinar, where we start looking at Google and Chrome as assistive technology. And so in a couple slides, I'll give you kind of a layout of what the hour will bring. We'll go from there. We'll see how we do with our topics that I had in mind as we go through. But let me give you a little bit of a brief intro of myself, so you have some of my contact info. So you have my website address, email, and Twitter handle. I am an independent assistive technology consultant working out of New Jersey. I provide evaluations and training on assistive technology for individuals with all types of disabilities in all settings. So I work with K-12, I work with higher ed, I work with vocational rehab, and people who are living in the community. My one last plug that I will give, and I know just from looking through the list of participants that I see today, I see some of my Twitter friends already on there. But if you're not on Twitter, I will take this 30-second non-commercial moment to say I feel like you're missing out on a great opportunity to learn from amazing AT professionals that are out there across the country. Excellent conversations, great ways to share information and materials and resources about all areas of assistive technology, whether it's just doing searches and collecting resources from people, or participating in something like AT Chat, which happens on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern. Another great way to connect with assistive technology people. So if you're not doing that yet, hopefully you will take this little moment of encouragement to jump onto Twitter. And please, if it seems scary, jump on, follow me. I will follow you back, and I will be happy to answer all your questions about Twitter. I think that's how important it is for us to be connected. You tend to remember those how important connections are. I just returned from ATIA last week. And if anybody was there, you know how great it was this year. But the connections that you make at a conference, that kind of individualized one-on-one conversations, those hallway conversations, that's what I almost think of with Twitter. It's like an opportunity to pick somebody's brain and just have a good, nice discussion about AT. So there you go. There's my plug. No money changing hands from Twitter there. I just believe in it that much. One thing that I will take a cheap, shameless plug. If you are interested in Chrome and assistive technology and you're looking for supports for yourself or for staff that you're working with, I recently published a quick card guide on using Chromebooks in the classroom, and so I just wanted to share that information out with you. There's a link at the bottom. It's tinyurl.com/Chromecard. So that's a nice little reminder of you looking for resources about Chrome as you move forward. So as we go through, I see you guys are already using it, which is great. As you go through the hour, please use the chat window. I have the chat window up now. I'm going to do my best to watch it as I go through. Like I'm seeing that John backed me up about my Twitter thing, and I can agree John is not getting money from Twitter either. I think we just really think it's a great opportunity. But use the Twitter, use the chat window if you have questions. I'll try my best to watch them as they go past, but if I miss them, please don't take personal offense. I will try to scroll through them occasionally when I take a breath and see if I can answer some questions. But if something hits you as we're going through, don't save questions till the end. Drop it into the chat. I'll take a second to look every once in a while. I think it's important for people to get those questions out the second that they hit you, so that we can make sure we get your needs addressed as we go through our time together. As we talk about our agenda, I'll kind of give you the general idea of what I'm thinking here, which is exciting in a sense. If you have participated in any of the other webinars that I've done about Chrome, I tend to do a lot of Chrome webinars, but pretty much just focus on the tools themselves, the apps and the extensions. The nice thing about this today is that we're really not going to talk much about those apps and extensions yet. We're going to do that next week. And so the nice idea about this extended format a little is it gives a little time to talk about all of those other areas when we start thinking about using Chromebooks as assistive technology and using Chrome as a support for people. And so what's nice, as you see from the agenda as we go through, we'll talk about the idea of matching people to technology with the SET framework. We'll talk about using the Chromebooks and the accessibility that's built in. But what's also nice is we'll have an opportunity to talk a little deeper about alternate access to Chromebooks, using the Google apps that come with someone's profile as soon as you create an account, and then finally some tools and some tips and tricks of how to extend the function of your Chromebook. And this is going to be kind of a fun webinar for me because I don't get a chance to do that very often, to go a little deeper. But don't worry, we will do the apps and extensions next week, I promise. So there's my little tease. Join me next week and we'll dive back into the apps and extensions. But this was kind of a nicer, kind of broader stroke of looking at Chrome and the Chromebooks. And so I'm kind of excited to share that with you today. And let's see how this goes. I'm just very excited about it. Let's see. I'll start with a little poll. A quick idea. And this is just for my own personal understanding of who we are and where we all come from. The idea of what environment do you work in? What's your background? I'm just curious who we have on the line with us. So we have a poll that will open up. And I will stop sharing my screen just for a second so I can see it, just to get a sense of who we all are. And then I'll turn my screen sharing back on. All right. AT specialist, people after my own heart. Good. Okay. Good. Good. A nice mix. A big chunk of us are AT specialists, but we have a nice kind of mix of just about everybody else represented as well. I just keep waiting for one PT to click in, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So we have some SLPs and some OTs, people in K-12, some higher ed people, some consumers and parents, which is great. I'm happy to see that. All right, I think that's perfect. So we'll close our poll just so that we get. Now I have a general idea of what who we are, and where we're looking at this from. We'll go back to the screen sharing just to give you kind of an idea. And I'm just giving it a second to make sure it all pops back on. Okay, there we go. So when we think about it, I always start with this kind of slide and this kind of idea of what we're talking about when we look at assistive technology, just in general. And I think like anything else, a lot of times as we start to see these new technology initiatives, let's call them, there is always that moment where we need to re-educate people we're working with in the idea of the feature match process, of making sure that technology tools are matching the individuals that we're working with and their needs. We've seen this in the past with laptop computers, iPads, and now we're seeing the same issue with Chromebooks, where initiatives are being thrust upon us sometimes with not much say for ourselves. We don't have much opportunity to sway that. But what's happening is that these initiatives are becoming more prevalent with the idea of trying to get more technology in a classroom or more technology in higher ed. And considering how many of us were doing K-12 and our AT specialists, you're just kind of going to see it all over the place. But what we always have to remind people is this idea of don't forget the process. Take a step back, remember the process of how we focus on the person and then work towards the tool. And I think it's important to remind people because people who are technology users, or I should say anyone who's not afraid of technology, and we'll always come across people that are afraid of technology, but the people that aren't afraid of it will typically want to use technology in some way. And what happens is we get this experience of people forcing technology into situations. It's the square technology peg into the round hole, and using it as much as they can and trying to find instances where it makes sense. And in that process, sometimes forgetting the idea of there are instances where technology just won't be right for someone for whatever reason. But I think if we look at it systematically, and that's really what the SET framework's all about, it's almost like taking a breath in a sense and reminding people to focus on the process. Don't let the technology drive the implementation, but instead let the person drive the implementation, the consumer, the person that's going to use our technology. And so we look at that idea with the SET framework, and if you're not familiar with it, even though that a large chunk of us are AT specialists, I'm hoping that all of you AT specialists out there are shaking your head yes right now, that you are with me on the SET framework. But keeping the idea of looking at the student or the person, if you're working with an adult, replace student with the word skills. And I think that sometimes helps me frame it to people in other environments. Thinking about the idea of, tell me about that person. What are they able to do? What are their abilities? What are their skills? What are their likes and dislikes? Paint the picture for me of who that person is. In the environments, tell me where they're going to be. I think when we start exploring the idea of Chrome, and I know it comes up on the other slide, the next slide, but I'll jump the gun anyway. Think about Chrome and what we're talking about. One of the biggest features of Chrome is the ability for it to work across environments. And so that is very beneficial for someone as we start looking at this idea of using technology and where are we going to use it. Finally, before we even jump to the tools part, we talk about the tasks. Tell me what the person needs to accomplish. That is what tells us what the technology will do. Don't get so overwhelmed and so engaged in a tool that we forget, does that tool even make sense for the task at hand? In the past, this was a great opportunity with the SET framework with someone who was requesting voice recognition software. And everyone had to have voice recognition software. Didn't matter. That was going to be the answer. If you were able to speak, that was our answer. And as you go through the SET framework for that, you talk about that, there were some instances where if a person's tasks were very simple and straightforward as writing, to where they were simply writing in a single word or a short phrase, for any of us who use voice recognition, that's the one time I don't use voice recognition, is with a short phrase, maybe 2 or 3 words, because of the potential for it to not get the correct words in there. And now I've taken something that is potentially, using some other tools, a 30-second to a minute solution, and created something where the person has to think about how to say it, what to say, the commands that will replace words when they're spelled incorrectly or written incorrectly. And so all of those processes start to weigh into the fact this is the task that has to be accomplished. Then we look at the features of that tool. If the features of our tool don't match those first 3 areas, what the skills are, where the environments are, and what the tasks are, it doesn't matter how many people tell me the Chromebook is the right answer for this person. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It's as easy as that. If it doesn't match their need, and we can show that in those first 3 areas, then we need to move on to another tool. And we need to take a minute to say to people, this will not work, and here's why. And I think that's really important for ourselves as AT people, or for anyone involved with helping to implement technology for someone, is making sure we are comfortable enough with our rationale for using tools or not, and be comfortable with our decision-making process. And this framework gives us the opportunity to have that process in place. And so that it's really important. And I know this feels kind of soapboxy in the beginning, Trust me, I'll jump off the box in a second. We won't jump back on probably. We may, but maybe later. But the idea, I think this is really important because I think it is really a key to everything we do with regards to technology. It all starts here. The rest, relatively straightforward. And anybody who does a lot with evaluating technology, once you've figured out the skills of the person and what they need, finding the tools to match it is very simple. And so we start remembering ourselves, remembering about those kinds of issues as we go through. All right, soapbox is off. That's it, I stepped off. All right, so we're talking about Chrome today. Chrome, Google, Chromebooks, that whole picture is what we're talking about. The nice thing about this and why this has become so important for us in the field is the idea of how prevalent these tools have become. And one of the bonuses of that, as we start to think about Chrome, is just the ability to use it pretty much anywhere and have access to the supports we need. So what we'll do is I'll launch back out of this to do our next poll. This is our second and last poll. So hopefully Nolan will launch that up for me. And we'll find out what is your comfort level with Chrome. All right, so here's your choices. What's your experience level with using Chrome? You have some choices here. If you really don't use Chrome at all and you thought that was just on your car bumper, that'd be one. Not your preferred browser, but you use it sometimes. Your preferred browser, and then I gave you guys a last one, which is love it, I'm ready to completely dive in and become a Google certified educator, I'm ready. All right, so as we start to see people kind of filling in, all right, you get a general idea of people using it as their preferred browser, and then we have another large chunk of the group who use it sometimes but not always. And that's fine. So as we go through, you know, we'll talk about this a little bit, and when we look at it today, as well as I hope you join me next week as well when we follow up, and we'll start looking at ways that this maybe I can convert some of you. That would be nice. I have found that I have become a Chrome user exclusively. And I think about why that is, and like anything else, it's kind of a mind shift sometimes into the idea of jumping in to a single way to do things. And I just saw Andy's question about being certified in Chrome. And what you end up being, Andy, is actually through Google, you can sit for exams and become a Google certified educator. And one of the exams you have to sit for is a Chrome exam. You do Chrome, you do Google Drive, you do Google Sites. There's a whole bunch of them you have to do. I believe you have to do, don't hold me to this, but I think it's 5 different exams, either 5 or 6. I'm not positive. Yeah, I'll try to dig up the link afterwards and paste it into either here or the discussion board. But that might be something that's of interest to people. Oh, good, I was correct. It's 5. Thank you, Andy. But the idea of thinking about Chrome and this idea of this mind shift, and what makes this so powerful is that for many of us, and anyone who's been in AT for longer than several years now, because this is a fairly new phenomenon, we are from the day of a student with a disability needs a support. If it's a software support, that support gets loaded on that computer. And you can't see me because I have my webcam on, but I'm pointing at something right now. That software tended to live on a specific machine that the individual we were working with had to work on. And so what happened is, if that work needed to happen in multiple environments, the natural reaction was there were two things we could do. We could purchase a laptop for that person, and they would then carry that laptop around with them wherever they went with the specialized software, or we buy multiple copies of software and then install it wherever our person might be. Cut to now, and fast forward to where we are right now, this idea of Chrome and its supports has changed that philosophy in a sense that the tools live attached to my profile, which is all online. And so what happens is now, if I recommend a tool for a person I'm working with, and it's a Chrome-based support, that support attaches itself to their Google profile. And regardless of where they go, their tools support them, and their tools follow them. And so now we have that beautiful situation, which every time I see it, the school makes me smile just a little bit more, of that student that 2 years ago I might have been working with, and I had to have them using a specific laptop or perhaps using a classroom computer that was off to the side somewhere, kind of disconnected from their classmates. Now I have students that now can just pull a Chromebook out of the cart like every other student in class. It's exactly the same. They log into it, their tools and their supports pop up. And so what happens is we have this opportunity for the students we're working with in K through 12 to not feel that sense of I'm using something different or I'm uncomfortable because my tools or my technology is not what everybody else is using. And so we start thinking about that idea of the power of that. And Jennifer asks about the ideas for creating profiles for kids under 13 in a public school. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting conversation, and one that I would certainly have with my IT departments in a school. And also, there are certain ways that when you start using the Google Apps for Education, which we'll talk about in a couple slides, when you start using them, you can pick and choose what features the students can have access to. So you have opportunities for students who are younger to not have the same access to the tools as everyone else. And what also happens is the idea of, for under 13, you can control the way that their mail works, so that their mail is only internal to the domain they are attached to. So if their school district is the domain, they can't receive mail from outside the domain, and they can't send mail outside the domain. So it does kind of keep them in the smaller community of the school district itself. And so I think that's kind of a nice way to look at it. But thinking about Chrome and how that works and the ability to attach things to our profile is really, it's just been such a shift in the way we do things as AT people. It's been really, really kind of exciting. So we'll jump into the idea of what is the difference, because we're talking about Chrome, we're talking about Google, but the important thing to remember is there is a difference here. And it's a good time to do it. I do it now, early in the presentation, because I've done it in the past really late, and I realize people go through the whole time and then they ask questions like, can I load software into my Chromebook? And so what is the difference between a Chromebook and a Mac and a PC? So we have the pictures of each up on the screen right now. And really, the largest difference between these different platforms is the idea that the Chromebook does not allow us to install third-party software. And so what happens is anything I use on the Chromebook has to be installed as a Google app or an extension. What that basically means is it installs that directly into the browser. And basically, the browser, your Chrome browser, becomes, in essence, the operating system. Whereas if we have a PC or a Mac, we can load software in there. We can do whatever we want. So we have Dragon Naturally Speaking. We can load it in there. It doesn't matter. We can load anything we want in there. So the Chromebook, that is one of the dramatic differences, is that there is no load of software. One of the other things is because all your supports are connected to your profile, ideally, you would want to have internet access for a Chromebook to be its most effective. And this is one of the myths with Chromebooks. In the past, when Chromebooks first came out, there was not a wide range of tools that worked in an offline mode. And so what people used to think is that if I'm not connected to an internet source, if I'm not connected to Wi-Fi, my Chromebook does nothing. It is just a brick, just sits there. In the beginning, that might have been true. As this has been kind of an evolving operating system, what we found is there are many, many apps and extensions that will work in an offline mode. So if I'm not connected to the internet, I still will be able to complete some tasks. And what happens is any of the work I work on will stay stored locally on the device, and then once I get an internet connection, it will pop up and it will populate into my account. So there are opportunities to still use them. And so I think originally when these devices first came out, it was really all about using it on the internet. Now, kind of a different thing. We're seeing more and more that schools especially are going to Chromebooks, especially when you start thinking about high-stakes testing and computer-based standardized testing. They seem to be moving more towards this platform. Mostly because the test is online, these devices are relatively inexpensive, and you can really tend to get more devices for the amount of money you might spend. The cheapest Chromebook might be around $200, and then a fairly decent one may cost you a little more, maybe about $300 or $350, all the way up. I know there are a couple that are very expensive, but predominantly the Chromebook tends to live in that $200 to $350 range, which is relatively inexpensive in the bigger scheme of things. Not to say I couldn't just open my pocket and have $300 right now, but they're relatively inexpensive. Andrea was commenting on storage compared to regular or standard computers. Storage will be your big issue. Chromebooks themselves will not come with a lot of internal storage. And also not a particularly fast processor sometimes. And that's because of, and it's the comment to Andrea's second part of the question there, the bulk of your work is stored and done online. So once this is connected to your Google account, you store all of your materials online in your Google Drive. And that tends to be the strategy of how to do it. I know, I can tell you, I just had a successful week at ATIA last week, and I did not bring a computer with me. I only brought my Chromebook. And so now I feel like I've completely made that switch over to just the Chromebook because all of my files live online. And so I was able to pull down presentations from my Google Drive and share them. I have to admit, I didn't completely go into my Google Drive, and I'll be honest with you, I still had things stored on a flash drive that I brought with me, but I could do that. So I could store things remotely on a flash drive, or I could have loaded my presentations into the internal storage of my Chromebook, which has, I think it has a 200 gigabyte hard drive, because I got a bigger one, I got a nicer one, a little bit more expensive. But typical ones will not have that much storage, and so you have to be aware of where are your files living, how are you using that, and then as you move forward, and some of the comments where how much storage do you get, and people are commenting if you're using Google Apps for Education, so if you're in a domain that uses that, your storage is unlimited. If you're just a regular Google user, I believe they just bumped everybody up to 100 gigabytes, but I'm not sure about that. It used to be 10 or 15, Andy. I think they bumped that up. And I know that when I bought my last Chromebook, part of what the little bonus of buying it is they bumped my account up to 200 gigabytes for 2 years, I think. My hope is by the time my 2 years is up, storage will be so dirt cheap that I'll just be getting that amount for free anyway. That's my hope. So we'll see how that hope plays out. So thinking about the differences here, that is one of the big ones, storage and speed. It is a relatively simple, straightforward computer, a Chromebook. It does have some built-in accessibility, which is important for us as we think about AT and using people with a wide range of abilities. And so that becomes important to us. And so there is some support in there for high contrast. There is a screen reader built into the operating system. It's called Chromebox, VOX. It is okay. It's not bad. It is much better. I'm trying to find all my positive ways to say things. If you're an individual, here's what I will say, and I'll make this relatively declarative. If you're a JAWS user, so if you're working with an individual with a visual impairment or who is blind, and they are a JAWS user, Chromebox is not JAWS. It has JAWS features. It has screen reading features and those capabilities. But for some of the people that I've worked with that are JAWS users, as I share this with them, it is not quite the same experience. And so that has to be a consideration. And as we think about that, those are one of those considerations when I think back to the set framework, what we were talking about a few minutes ago, the idea of making sure that as we are exploring the options for using a Chromebook, if someone has very specific needs, someone is blind or visually impaired, and they need a higher level of support from third-party software, a Chromebook might not be the right answer for them. What might be the right answer is using the Chrome browser on a PC or a Mac and using the additional supports. And I think that's where that education part comes in, and we start talking to people as we roll these devices out. And I had this at the end of last school year. I was doing an evaluation for a school, and the young girl was a JAWS user, and she was moving from the elementary school to the middle school, and the middle school was a Chromebook school. Well, she used a Windows PC laptop, Windows 7 laptop, because she used JAWS. And the discussion was, or the statement was, she couldn't use that when she got to middle school because they use Chromebooks. And it was an opportunity for education and saying to the people in the middle school, well, they're using Chromebooks, but what are they doing? And that goes back to the tasks of the SET framework. And so as we started to kind of bore down through the tasks a little bit, what they really were saying is that the teacher was using Google Drive to share documents, and that's what the students were working on. And if that's the case, then if the student I'm working with needs additional support, but can still access Google Drive on her laptop, there really is no reason for her to be on a Chromebook. That doesn't really matter. And it was important to kind of remind people that think to what we are doing, not to the tool necessarily, but think about what needs to be accomplished. And so that was an important reminder. So know that it has built-in accessibility. Some of it's very good. The screen magnifier is very good. There's an on-screen keyboard. You can adjust the size of the cursor. So there's some pretty straightforward supports for vision impairments. What I'm looking forward to seeing is some more options for individuals with physical access, so we can adjust some things on the keyboard, not a whole lot yet. There is sticky keys to hold down the modifiers and things like that. So there are some things, and I think as this continues to grow, this will be features that will constantly change. It's nice. I'm part of a beta tester group for the Chrome operating system, and I just got an email this morning from them that they pushed out some new beta features. So they're constantly pushing new features out that are really nice and eventually work their way into the operating system as we use it. So it's a really nice opportunity to see things change right from kind of the ground up, and that's what we're seeing with the Chrome OS. What's really nice when we start thinking about Chromebooks themselves, And again, people tend to think, oh, they're Chromebooks, they're kind of lower end computers and we can't really do much with them. What we can find is there are many tools out there that we use as AT people that work very well on these devices. So if you have a Chromebook, I've had good experience plugging in different mouse alternatives to it. Trackballs, joysticks, different kinds of mice. So if we're looking at USB mouse alternatives, I've had good success plugging them in and having them work on a Chromebook. So again, if we're looking at that platform of using a Chromebook but needing the alternate access, we're getting that through some of those regular supports that we would use on any other computer we would interact with an individual. And also switches. If we have somebody with pretty significant physical disabilities who needs switch access, we can plug switch adapter boxes right into the Chromebook. The one in the picture there is the Don Johnson switch interface. That's a USB interface. It plugs directly into the Chromebook and allows me to plug in single switches to control the functions on my device. Andy was asking about an external keyboard. Can that be added as well with USB? It can. What I found with keyboards, Andy, and I'll give you this one little caveat here, and I've also found the same thing with mouse alternatives. Some of the higher end mouse alternatives and keyboard alternatives, if they need a driver in order to work, so if I had to load software or go to a website to download a driver, chances are high those will not work on a Chromebook. What I've had the most success with is these straightforward tools that don't need a driver installed. They just work with the drivers that are already there. Because I've had some instance where a couple of the ergonomic keyboards that I wanted to try with a person, where the keyboards were split and they were done in a different layout, those keyboards did not work on a Chromebook because it didn't recognize the key presses because it needed a driver to help work that out. So that was one of the issues that I came up with there. So it's something to consider. At this point, I haven't seen a good list of alternatives that work and don't work. And one of these days, maybe I'll get a free minute to actually make that list. But until then, I will probably just say to you, your best bet, plug it in and see what happens. I know that's kind of a cop-out on my end, but that's what I tend to do. I plug it in, mess around with it, see if I can do things. If I get success, I'm happy. I put that in my little bank of notes and, ooh, that one will work some other time. And so we go from there. That's not to say that as we keep talking about alternative access, there still are some alternatives that are fairly high-tech that do work right on the Chromebook. The one that I've been having the most kind of fun with when I talk to people is using the Tracker Pro, which has the camera that mounts to the computer with a USB it plugs in, and then the person wears the reflective dot on their head to control the cursor. I've been pleasantly surprised that that works really well on the Chromebook. And so there is no need to load a driver for that to work. I had a nice experience of figuring that out because I work with a young lady at a high school near me who uses the tracker on her laptop, the Tracker Pro. And the school just went to Chromebooks, and the Chromebook is about a third of the weight of the laptop she's carting around with her all day on her wheelchair. And so we tried that to see if it would work, and we were happy to see that we were able to plug her tracker right into the Chromebook that was in the classroom. We didn't have to do anything else to it except plug it in, and she was able to use the same access method she used already. So again, it took this young lady from using a very old, very ugly, very big, very slow laptop. We got to push that to the side a little bit, and she's able to go in the classroom. One of her classmates gets the Chromebook out of the cart for her, plugs her USB tracker in, and then she's able to work automatically, which has been fantastic for her. So that's kind of a higher end support. And then also thinking about some of the supports that are Bluetooth. The Chromebooks have Bluetooth built into them. So think about some of your other tools that we use for AT that are Bluetooth, whether it's keyboards, whether it's mice, whether it's like on the screen now, the Bluetooth from AbleNet, which is a Bluetooth switch interface. So it allows me to plug two switches into a device and then control functions through Bluetooth. That also works on the Chromebook. So it has some nice opportunities to use a lot of the tools that we are familiar with in this environment. And so that's been really nice to see that some of our tried and true AT supports that we're familiar with, we can still use them regardless of these moves to other platforms, which is where we're heading off now. Mary asked, does the Chromebook work with hearing aids that use Bluetooth? Mary, I have no idea. I have to find a pen. I don't know. I have to write that down. That's a great question that I don't know the answer to, but I'm going to hunt that down because that's a great idea. I don't know. Stay with me during the week, and I'll show you the link where the discussion board is, and we'll talk about that. That's a great idea. Now you all have to sit quietly while I write. Okay, cool. I don't know. Awesome. I'll find that out for you, though. Or if you find it, share it with me, and we'll go back and forth. One of us has got to find it. It's a good idea, and that's the kind of thing, because this is such a new platform, I think we're all trying to kind of find our way through it. And it's always nice when I'm able to show someone a tool that I've been using that's an AT tool that we've used forever, but suddenly I can use it with this new platform. And then when you guys think of these other things that I don't work with all the time, these are awesome. Thank you. As we go through, we'll jump out of Access. We'll talk real quick about Google Apps. And when we think about Google Apps, and if you're a Google Apps for Education school, this is the array of tools you have that come with that. Everything from Gmail to your calendar, to Google Drive, to the Chrome browser, to Hangouts for video conferencing, the Google Sites in order to build your own websites. All of these tools are part of the platform of supports that we have. I think what's great about that, and the picture on the slide, I tried to think of how would I sum up Google Apps for Education. And I was talking with my wife, and we were sitting there talking about it, and I was explaining it to her, and I said, you know, it's all about collaboration. And that's the picture that we decided to throw on that page. Because it's really about tools to allow us to work together. If you're a Google Apps user and you use Google Docs, one of the most powerful features is that you can share documents instantly. We can work collaboratively as we go. We can add things in, and instantly someone else can see it, whether they're in the same room with us, whether they're in another place, in another state, in another country. Doesn't matter. The collaboration part has been so powerful with that. And I think that's one of the bonuses of what we see with Google Apps. What we're going to do is I'm going to share with you a resource at the end of a website that I put together for us to kind of support us as we move through this. And my hope is, as we go through the week leading up to next week's webinar, that you will all log into this webpage and try to do some of these things for yourself. Like build a Google site for something that would work for you, and then share it with the group. Then I'm going to do another page, and maybe I'll put it up there tomorrow or the next day, to look at using a Google Doc and how could you collaboratively use that in your environment to share materials. And start thinking broadly about these supports and what's there and how they work and how we can use them to match the individuals we're working with their, and connect them to their classmates, to their coworkers, to other people in their community, whatever it might be. And so we'll have some supports for that. I have to say that out of the Google Apps, the one as an AT person I'm finding the most benefit of sometimes is using the Google Sites, which people don't always use. And that is the tool that allows me to build my own web pages. But what I'm finding as I go through it is that I'm able to build websites that are free, first of all, which is a bonus, that are collaborative, that multiple people can work on. And then the idea of building in supports for any learner that I'm working with. So can I build in video clips to support learning? Can I build in collaborative documents to support learning? The idea of adding in links and images to take people out to additional resources to build background knowledge. And what I find is when I think about the idea of people talking about universal design for learning, I find that using the Google Apps, and especially sites, gives me such a nice opportunity to build something, to share materials with anyone of any ability, of any learning style who wants to learn in different ways, and provide them the level of support that they need. And it's really very nice. And, you know, it's not the best site builder in the world, and Andy commented that it is good, though. And it is, it's decent. I think the features that are there are powerful for us. They give us a lot of opportunity to think of ways we could connect our individuals to the rest of their classmates. And so it's just a nice opportunity. So hopefully you'll come along on the ride with me during the week, and we'll build different sites, and I'll share some that I've built with you, and hopefully you guys will build some, and we'll kind of share them together. Think about how we're going to use those in our own practice, in our own environments with the individuals we serve. So I'm looking forward to that as we move through the week. And then the other thing that's new, and this is very specific only if you are a Google Apps for Education site, you now have access to Google Classroom, which is their newer tool that think of all those collaborative supports that are in Google Drive. Google Drive, sites, forms, documents, all of those tools. And Google Classroom allows you to pull them all together and build a shared group that has access to all of these materials. And so you're seeing this roll out into more schools. It's really exciting to watch teachers become excited about this. And it gives them opportunities to share assignments, collaborate on documents, work together. And it makes it easy for the teacher to share with the student and the student to share back with the teacher. And so it's really, really nice. So looking at that, how you would use that to kind of combine that in a classroom setting or in a school setting. I'm trying to read some of the things you guys were talking about. The idea of making things more accessible, and I think Tammy had a good point. Sometimes the apps and the add-ons, the extensions that we work with, are what build in some of those accessibility pieces for us. The text-to-speech support, the screen reading support. And so thinking about how you would do that. And so, you know, I think you guys have good points about the idea of security, sharing information. The great thing about Classroom and this kind of new tool that they've rolled out is that it very much keeps this as a small closed network. That doesn't mean there aren't still issues of that your IT department needs to work out as far as general security, not sharing people's information, but it's important to kind of keep that in mind as we go through. So Classroom. I've just only started working with Classroom because for the longest time I didn't have an email address that was associated with a Google Apps for Education school domain. And so recently I got myself an email address for the school that I work with. So now I'm able to do that. So now I'm going to be playing with that too. So we'll definitely move to that. Ron asked the idea, is Chromebook accessible with other Google apps? It does tend to be, and Ron, I'm sorry for the vagueness of this, fairly accessible. And I think that's partly an issue with Chrome itself that they're continuing to work on, is this constant kind of strategy now to make things more accessible. So I think if you think back to Google Drive itself, maybe a year ago, it was very inaccessible to other supports. And I think it has become better. I think it still has a little ways to go, though. So it's certainly getting better. But Chromebook tends to be the best way to interact with it because it is a Google service working within the Google Drive or the Google Apps platform. Tends to be a little bit more stable and functional, I guess would be a good word. Some of the other things we talk about, and this will be a big one for next week as we look at apps and extensions and using the Chrome Web Store to install those in our profile. Again, the important takeaway from this with the idea of the Web Store is within Chrome, when you sign up for Chrome, you get your account and you get the basic Google apps that we talked about before. Anything you want to do to extend the functionality of your profile, you need to do by adding in apps and extensions. And so you do that through the store, you attach these tools to your profile, and then wherever you log in to whatever platform, whatever device, your tools will follow you across and then load into that device. Very nice. And we'll spend more time next week looking at that, but I just wanted to touch on it right now, that that's how you go about doing some of these things. And so some of the other things I think about, when I think about the Chromebooks themselves and using them effectively, here's some things towards the end that we'll just kind of touch on that remind us of things we have to do. And I do this because it never fails. I don't care what the technology platform is. If someone gets $20,000 for technology, they spend $20,000 on technology and give so very little thought to cases and protectors sometimes. And so this reminder of it has to be considered at the point of implementation. Is, do you need cases to protect the device? Do you need a bag that you can carry it with? Do you need a mount to mount it to something? Again, I was at the ATIA conference last week, spent a really nice time talking to some of the mounting companies about the idea of looking at their laptop mounts and making adjustments for them for these smaller profile, lighter Chromebooks to make sure they're prepared when people start asking for them. So if I have an individual who uses a wheelchair, I want to know that the mount has a bracket that works for the Chromebook that the school has. So keeping that in mind as people move forward, and not just mounts, but protective cases. I've said this to people before, nothing scares me more as an AT person than seeing a naked device run past me. Whether it's a tablet without a case, a laptop without a protective sleeve, whatever it might be, when I see just a random device kind of moving past me, it gets me very nervous because I feel like it's just a matter of time before that goes for the ride. Some of the other things, again, these last few slides remind us about the idea of, can we extend the functionality of the Chromebook? So if a classroom or a workplace is using a document camera, so the example on the screen is the iPivo, and the camera that I'm showing on the screen is the one that I own, which is the Ziggy HD. Great camera, relatively inexpensive, great display of information. But it requires software to load in your computer. What iPivo has done is they've put out a Chrome app, and when you install that in your browser, it basically allows you to plug in any of their document cameras into your Chromebook and display the information on the screen. Really nice way to make sure that you have the ability to use these other tools in your environment in the Chromebook setting. So just because I have a Chromebook now doesn't mean I have to sacrifice all the other tools that I was using before. So a really nice setup with the iPivo. The other thing, and this is something that might be less about the end user, and I almost think about this more for us as the service providers. And the idea of this is looking at ways to remotely connect to other computers. And so what you can do is Chrome has an app called the Remote Desktop, which allows me to wirelessly and remotely connect into my laptop. So I have a Windows PC laptop that I leave at my house now. I don't even bring it anywhere with me. I just leave it here. It's a Windows 7 machine, but I have the app on my Chromebook. If I need to access any of the software on my Windows PC, I can access it through my Chromebook by using the Remote Desktop. So now, if something runs on the PC, I can still use it in my Chromebook. If it's something that has text-to-speech, it will still talk out loud from my Chromebook. Now, granted, it's probably also talking at home wherever my laptop is, which might freak people out, but it is also talking right where I am. So if I have tools as an evaluator that I want to try with a student, I can do those through my Chromebook without having to bring multiple platforms with me. If a student uses a specific AT tool that doesn't exist as a Chrome app yet, use the Chrome Remote Desktop to log into a computer that has that software. And really nice opportunity to see that kind of cross use and not have to cart around even more stuff with us constantly. And then one of the other things that, if you haven't seen yet, the idea of a Chromecast, that's the device on the screen. It looks like a little flash drive, but it plugs into your HDMI connector on your TV or projector, and now I'm able to wirelessly send my screen to a big projection screen. So I can take my Chromebook and extend its display out to somewhere else wirelessly using that device. Relatively inexpensive, about 30 bucks or so for one of those, but again, gives you that opportunity to extend it out. And Andy commented on the Chrome Remote Desktop for the iPad. I was so happy when I saw that come out. So they just released that also. It's an app for your iOS devices that is the same function. So it's called Chrome Remote Desktop, and it allows you to do that exact same thing. So I can now use my iPad to connect into my laptop as well. Really nice, free app, fantastic, love it. Good deal. So guys, we're almost at the end. I've been trying to answer as we went. I'm trying to watch the questions as I move along, and I think I did a pretty good job. Again, if I didn't catch yours, don't take it personally. I apologize. But what Nicole commented on, if you use a VGA projector, you're going to need some kind of connector in between these devices because the Chromecast only has an HDMI plug, so you may need to buy yet another dongle. And if anybody does a lot with different devices, you end up with a bag that has all those dongles in it. And so you're going to need to have one of those as well. So that's a good point. Some of the things that I have set up for us is that I have put together a Google site that we can look at. Let me just show it to you for 1 second. Let me bounce out of that so you guys can see. And here to see, have the link on the slide page there. I'll also put this link into our discussion forum too, so you have the access. But it's sites.google.com/site/CTD Tech Talk. And so it's just a framework of the site, nothing too fancy, but I have some links on the left-hand side of some different kinds of supports that we might want to look at. As the week goes on, I'll make some more pages and drop them in there. But I thought I would start us with just one about making your own Google site. If you want to explore that and try to make something that works for you, and then share your page link back in the discussion forum, then we can all view it and comment on it. We'll start with that, and I'll add some other ones too as we go through. And so that is the idea of the address for the collaborative site. We have our discussion forum, which is happening in the cafe, and so you guys will get the link to that as well. And the link is up there on the screen. We have our webinar next week, and I hope you'll join me again. So that's on the 12th at 2 o'clock Eastern, and we will spend our entire time just talking about apps and extensions. And so we will have an opportunity for you to go app crazy and just install bunches of things into your Chrome browser. And so we'll be able to do that as well. So with that, we have 1 minute left. I think that we'll also post up into, it's already posted, and Marie posted up, thank you. There is a SurveyMonkey link that was posted in the chat window for you to go to and fill out to kind of give you feedback on how this went today. And I'll see if there's any other questions. And the webinar will be recorded. And I think I saw before that it will be up on the site tomorrow. And someone asked, is next week the 9th? So did I give you the wrong date? Now you guys can watch me frantically look through my calendar. I have the 12th. Please tell me it's the 12th, somebody. That's what I have. I believe it's the 12th. Someone else has it as the 9th too? Mm-hmm. It is the 9th. Okay, how about on the 9th we'll talk then? Sorry, I have the 12th in my calendar. No big deal. All right. So we'll fix that, and we'll get that out to you to make sure you guys have the date. More importantly, I think we should make sure I have the correct date. So we'll go from there. But besides that, I appreciate your conversation. You guys were great in that chat window. I really do appreciate it. So I look forward to talking with you throughout the week in that discussion forum. Bring your questions. Bring all your questions. Whatever you got, bring it, and we'll talk about it as a group. So looking forward to it. And then I will certainly talk to you next week on the 9th at 2 o'clock. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.